Here is a story called Lafitte's Restless Ghost. A tale commonly told about Lafitte's treasure is that the ghost of the smuggler continually wanders the earth searching for a worthy inheritor of his fortune. Someone who will use the treasure for good rather than for evil or selfish purposes. Only when he finds such a person will Lafitte be absolved of his sins. Most of these ghost legends seem to be based on a story told by a Confederate veteran about a night he had once spent in an old house near the town of Laport on the shore of Galveston Bay. It was a cold and blustery February day in the 1880s. Daylight was fading and he was dead tired. By the uncertain light of the moon, he saw that he'd reached a stable. And beyond the stable, not many yards distant, he could barely make out the dark outline of a house. Hitching his horse to a post inside the stable, he started toward the house with his saddle and blanket. He called out, but the only answer was the roar of the waves tearing at the bluff. Finding the great double doors of the house barred, he made his way through a window. He struck a match and found himself in a room that gave promise of comfort. A stack of firewood laid beside the fireplace. Before long, he had a fire going. Spreading his horse blanket close to the blaze and using the saddle for a pillow and the slicker for cover, he went to sleep. "I do not know how long I slept," he said afterward, "when I became aware of a steady gaze fixed upon my face. The man was looking down on me, and no living creature ever stood so still. There was imperious command in the unblinking eyes, and yet I saw profound entreaty also. It was plain that the visitant had business with me. I arose, and together we left the room, passed its neighbor, and entered a third, a barren little apartment through whose cracks the wind came mercilessly. I think it was I who had opened the doors. My companion did not seem to move. He was merely present. 'It is here,' he said, as I halted in the middle of the bare floor, 'that more gold lies buried than is good for any man. You have but to dig, and it is yours. You can use it, I cannot. However, it must be applied only to purposes of highest beneficence. Not one penny may be evilly or selfishly spent. On this point you must keep faith and beware of any failing. Do you accept?' I answered, 'Yes,' and the visitant was gone, and I was shivering with cold. Groping his way back to his fire, the traveler piled on more wood until he had a generous blaze. Then he dozed off, only to wake again in the presence of the visitant. The still reproach of his fixed eyes was worse than wrath. 'I need your help more than you can know,' he said, 'and you would fail me? The treasure is mine to give. I paid for it with the substance of my soul. I want you to have it. With it you can balance somewhat the burden of guilt I carry for its sake.' Again we made the journey to the spot where the treasure was buried, and this time he showed it to me. There were yellow coins, jeweled watches, women's bracelets, diamond rings, and strings of pearls. It was just such a trove as I had dreamed of when, as a boy, I had planned to dig for Lafitte's treasure, except that the quantity of it was greater. With the admonition, 'Do not force me to come again,' my companion was gone. Once more I made my way back to the fire. This time I took up my saddle and blanket and went out to the company of my horse. The wind and the waves were wailing together, but I thought I saw a promise of light across the chilly bay, and never was the prospect of dawn more welcome. As I saddled up and rode off, the doleful boom of the muddy water at the foot of the bluff came to me like an echoed anguish. Lafitte, it is said, still haunts the house at Laport, steadily pursuing his object of finding a fit recipient for his dangerous gift. But he never succeeds, and his disappointment is terrible. Some folks believe that when there is a particularly dolorous moan in the wash of the waves, it is the despair of the thwarted pirate finding voice in the wail of the waters.
This podcast is brought to you by ConfettiPark.com.